My best friend, Zach Taylor, was complaining to me again. He said his girlfriend had a crazy high sex drive, and he could barely keep up with her in bed. I couldn't help but feel a pang of jealousy, because my own fiancée, Vance, was completely ice cold. She absolutely detested intimacy. Years ago, Chloe was assaulted, leaving her with severe psychological trauma. Ever since, she panicked whenever a man touched her. I loved her, so I respected her boundaries and locked my own desires away. Today was Zach's wedding day. He asked me to take the 10-carat diamond ring he'd prepared and deliver it to his bride in the bridal suite. As I walked in, I saw a familiar back sitting in front of the vanity mirror, wearing a stunning white lace wedding dress. When my eyes locked onto the butterfly tattoo on her shoulder blade, my entire body went numb. I could never mistake it. Zach's bride was none other than my frigid fiancée, Chloe. Sitting next to her was our mutual friend, Ashley. Chloe, are you really going through with this? If Ethan finds out, he's going to lose his mind. Chloe paused, a flash of pain crossing her eyes before instantly vanishing. He's in New York, thousands of miles away. My assistant locked down all the media channels. He won't hear a single rumor. Ashley panicked. But you can only have one legal husband. What about your 5 years with Ethan? We won't divorce because Ethan and I never legally registered our marriage at City Hall. The papers we signed were fake. Chloe's voice was bone-chillingly cold. I leaned against the hallway wall, clutching the ring box so hard that the metal edges cut deep into my palm. Drip, drip. Fresh blood splattered onto the marble floor. She admitted it. Our marriage was a lie. What did those 5 years of romance, surprises, and devotion even mean to her? Chloe's expression softened into something tender as she continued. Years ago, when I was drugged at that party, I ended up in Zach's bed by mistake. I got pregnant with his child. I couldn't let our daughter grow up without a father. I moved, slipping the ring box into my pocket. The two people I trusted most in this world have been sleeping together behind my back, and they had a 4-year-old child to show for it. I wanted to storm in. I wanted to tear those two cheaters apart. But Chloe's next words stripped away any right I had to complain. When Victoria found out about Zach and me, I thought she would hate me for betraying Ethan, Chloe murmured, her eyes shimmering with emotion. But instead, she thanked me. Because of this, she found her biological son. Zach is the real heir to the Reynolds family. Ethan has been living high on the hog in Zach's place for over 20 years, while Zach was suffering out there. Zach was the one who was supposed to be my childhood sweetheart. He was the one who was supposed to live this luxury life with me. Ashley was stunned. Then what about Ethan? You're just going to throw him away like trash? He only got to be with me because he stole Zach's identity. All I feel for him now is a bit of pity. As Chloe's voice drifted off, I clenched my teeth so hard they nearly shattered. The words "child of a fraud and thief who stole a life" echoed relentlessly in my head. I turned and walked out of the wedding venue. Behind me, the minister was starting the vows. I paused, my footsteps dragging. At our commitment ceremony years ago, Chloe's father had thought she hated the arranged marriage with me and tried to swap the groom. When Chloe realized it wasn't me at the altar, she had thrown a massive tantrum, chasing me all the way to London to beg me back. It was the same grandeur, the same luxury cars, the same church. But today, the man she was marrying was someone else. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Victoria. Ethan, there's something I've kept from you for a long time. You were switched at birth. My real son is refusing to return home. He says he will only come back if you pack your things and go back to your biological parents. My throat tightened as I watched the stage. My finger hovered over the screen. On stage, Zach was sliding the ring onto Chloe's finger. She held Zach's arm, and as she looked out at the crowd, she finally spotted me. Her face paled, and she quickly rushed down the aisle toward me. Ethan, don't get the wrong idea. Zach was being forced by his family to marry a twice-divorced, ugly older woman. I only did this to save him. I didn't want you to watch your best friend get miserable. Her excuse was pathetic. Seeing her standing up there, softly accepting another man's kiss on her forehead, compared to the countless nights she had recoiled from my touch. It was a sickening joke. Noticing how white my face was, Chloe dragged me into the dressing room. She poured some of my heart medication into her palm and held it out. Ethan, you look terrible. Take this. I didn't take it. The pills slipped through her fingers, scattering all over the floor. Chloe, those nights you refused to sleep in my bed. Was it really because of your PTSD? Or did I just disgust you? My voice shook violently, my chest heaving. I wanted an answer. I wanted her to admit she had loved me, to admit her physical rejection wasn't because of who I was. Suddenly, a little boy rushed out from behind the rack, shoving me hard against the wall. Bad man. Don't hurt my mommy. I stumbled backward, my head slamming hard against the sharp edge of the windowsill. A warm liquid instantly flowed down my forehead, staining my white collar crimson. The little boy sat on the floor, wailing. Chloe's hand, which had instinctively reached out to catch me, froze. She pulled her hand back and scooped the boy into her arms. Ethan, no matter how angry you are, you can't take it out on a child. I leaned against the wall to steady myself, looking at the two of them. My head had never been clearer. I tapped my screen and sent the reply to Victoria. Asterisk, I understand. I'll swap back. I'll pack my things and move out within a week. Asterisk. Zach rushed into the room, shielding Chloe and the boy behind his back, looking at me with hostile eyes. But once he saw the blood dripping down my face, his expression faltered. Ethan, the kid didn't know any better. Don't take it to heart. We've been brothers for over a decade, I said, my voice hoarse and raw. Zach, how long have you two been doing this behind my back? I never knew she had two completely different faces, one for you and one for me. Zach panicked, his lips trembling. After a long silence, he seemed to find his courage, raising his chin. Before I knew I was the real Reynolds heir, I was so jealous of how Chloe treated you. But ever since that night, she climbed into my bed by mistake. I saw the necklace on Victoria's neck. That's when I knew. I am the real son. Chloe stepped out from behind Zach, standing firmly by his side. I took a deep breath. Even if you hated the universe, why did you have to sleep with my woman? Zach, we've been brothers for so long. Zach's eyes turned bloodshot, his emotions boiling over. Don't give me that charity bullshit. If we hadn't been switched, all of this, including Chloe, would have been mine. Am I wrong? I would have been the rightful heir of the Reynolds group, not some guy hiding in the shadows while my son is called a bastard. He glared at me, his voice full of resentment. Ethan, have some conscience. You enjoyed my luxury life for over 20 years. How could you live so peacefully? Chloe instinctively reached out to support me as I swayed, but then she looked at Zach with a sigh. Zach, stop it. Why should I stop? Why do I have to be the one who suffers? I should just leave then. Zach yelled, spinning around and storming out of the room. Chloe's throat bobbed. She gave me a long, complicated look. Ethan, just go, I whispered, closing my eyes to hold back the sting. If his suffering was because of me, I had no right to argue. But in my heart, I kept asking myself, what did I do wrong? What luxury did I actually enjoy? For the last 20 years in the Reynolds family, Victoria had trained me ruthlessly to be the perfect successor. Anything I wanted, I had to earn myself. At 17, while my classmates went on European vacations, I was stressing over college tuition, book fees, and living expenses. I had no holidays, no childhood, and even my marriage was prearranged. I thought my life was just a set program. I never expected Chloe to be my only variable. And now, that variable had turned into a bomb that blew my life to pieces. As I walked out of the venue, I ran right into Victoria. Victoria, I am not your mother, she interrupted coldly. My throat felt like it was blocked by concrete. I forced myself to correct my words. Mrs. Reynolds, where is Zach? She asked, searching the lobby. When she saw him across the street, she ran straight toward him without looking back once. You what's tickle? Across the street, Zach was crouching by a tree, venting his anger. Chloe was half kneeling beside him, comforting him. It looked exactly like our engagement party years ago. Back then, Chloe had stood before Victoria, promising to always stay by my side and love me forever. Looking at it now, it was nothing but a sickening farce. My phone rang continuously. I picked it up. Is this Ethan Reynolds? This is the National DNA Registry. We've found a match for your genetic profile. We need one more blood sample to confirm. Once the results are out, we will notify you immediately. Okay, I'll send it as soon as possible. I hung up, walking aimlessly down the street. Suddenly, Chloe ran up and grabbed my arm. Ethan, I'm not going to leave you just because of your identity. Can you please be reasonable? Don't make things difficult for me. If I didn't know our marriage was a sham, I might have actually believed her. I might have pitied her. I looked up, barely dodging a speeding car. Seeing my silence, her tone softened. The Reynolds group is holding a press conference tomorrow to announce Zach's return. He's feeling very insecure right now. Since you two used to be close, I need you to be there to support him and show the media there's no bad blood. I nodded slowly, my body swaying in the cold wind. Through the corner of my eye, I saw Chloe reach out to steady me, but Zach pulled her back from behind. I averted my gaze. These things never belonged to me anyway. Giving them back was only a matter of time. Fine. I'll be there. The day of the press conference arrived. The reporters were all waiting to see the downfall of the once proud Ethan Reynolds. They wanted to see the imposter fall from grace. But in the very last minute of the countdown, the entire venue erupted into chaos. I snapped my head around to look at the giant screen. The embarrassing photos of Zach's wild past had vanished. Instead, they had been replaced by compromised, highly inappropriate photos of me, each one 10 times more humiliating than anything Zach had ever faced. A flood of abuse immediately came crashing down on me from the crowd. I knew this Ethan guy was trash. He was afraid the real heir would take his spot, so he leaked these to ruin him. How malicious. The real heir is the victim here. Put Ethan in jail. Get him out of here. The press conference was abruptly cancelled, and the room descended into madness. Zach clutched his head, looking like he was on the verge of a mental breakdown. He glared at me, with pure hatred. Ethan, How could you do this to me? I never wanted to hurt you, but you're trying to drive me to suicide. I opened my mouth to explain, but a barrage of plastic water bottles slammed into my face and chest, cutting off my words. I shielded my head. Through the gaps of my arms, I saw Chloe quickly ushering Zach out of the hall. I didn't do this. Chloe, do you really think I'm that kind of person? I screamed, but before I could take a step, my feet swept through empty air. Someone had shoved me violently from behind. I fell off the 2-meter-high stage, my vision instantly going black as the insults continued to rain down. When I woke up, I was in a damp, dark basement. A harsh light turned on, revealing me tied hand and foot, kneeling on the cold concrete. Chloe stood half hidden in the shadows. She dragged me up by my collar. You did it. Her voice was filled with absolute certainty. I didn't. Chloe, is this really who I am in your eyes? I told you, I would never do something so pathetic. I desperately tried to explain, but she didn't listen to a single word. Set up the cameras, she ordered coldly. Several burly men walked in. They dumped a bucket of filthy sewer water right over my head. Their grip was brutal and ruthless. Asterisk click. Click. Click, asterisk. The camera shutters went off. I reeked of filth, my face pressed hard into the muddy floor. Every shred of my dignity as a man was crushed to dust. My eyes burned red. Are you insane? I have proof that it wasn't me. But I knew Chloe. Once she set her mind on something, she was merciless. Just like when a major shareholder had insulted me years ago, she had ruined his career within a day, making sure no company in the country would ever hire him. Now she was doing the same to me, to protect Zach. Zach is on the verge of jumping off a building, yet he still begged me not to punish you. Chloe said, her face twisted with anger. He suffered for 20 years, and all he wanted was some security. How could you hate him this much? Do you want to see him dead? I shook my head violently, spitting out the dirt. I didn't do it. Liar, Chloe sneered. You used to tell me everything. If you didn't do it, why didn't you show me the proof earlier? I let out a bitter laugh. I used to throw tantrums because I knew she loved me. Now, I was nothing to her. She waved her hand. 2 bodyguards stepped forward, tightening the ropes around my neck and arms until they bruised. They forced my head up to face a large monitor. It was Chloe's phone screen, being mirrored. Without a shred of hesitation, her finger tapped the screen, uploading hundreds of compromised photos of me online. Within minutes, it trended to #1 on social media. With every refresh, my dignity was dragged deeper into the mud. The negative posts about Zach were instantly buried by the scandal surrounding me. Thousands of people screenshotted, shared, and insulted me. The most disgusting slurs flooded my Instagram and Snapchat. Turns out the fake heir took those photos himself to frame the real one. He's a designer, right? I bet all his work was plagiarized too. I watched in horror as the design portfolio I had worked on for over a year was reported and taken down. My social media accounts were permanently banned. I was held down, unable to even lower my head. Shame burned through my body like a hot iron, from my scalp to my toes. My vision blurred, and right before I passed out, Chloe's soft voice drifted into my ears. Ethan, be good. You owe this to Zach. The same Chloe who used to shield me from Victoria's demands was now forcing me to submit. I managed a smile that was uglier than crying. I regretted everything. I cursed myself for ever holding onto a shred of hope for her. When I woke up again, I was in a warm bed. I sat up abruptly. Chloe was standing beside me, holding a glass of warm water and some painkillers. Her face was incredibly gentle. It was as if the woman who had stripped me of my dignity yesterday didn't exist. Ethan, are you hungry? She tucked the blanket around me. Her every movement was filled with the devotion of the old Chloe. It felt like the humiliation of yesterday was just a nightmare. My body trembled as I pushed her away, getting out of bed and walking out of the room. But when I stepped into the living room, my breath hitched. Hanging right in the center of the wall was a massive wedding portrait of Chloe and Zach. I froze, looking around the penthouse. Every corner of this room was filled with things I had once dreamed of. I remembered holding a picture of a limited edition graphics card, one of only 10 in the world, and smiling at Chloe. This is a masterpiece, but it's impossible to get. Chloe, do you think you could find one for me? Chloe had snuggled into my chest back then, whispering, I'll get the whole set for you, I promise. I had waited for a long time, but she never mentioned it again, so I assumed she forgot. I never managed to get my hands on it. But here, in Zach's apartment, the entire set was proudly on display. The high-end gaming setup, the custom ergonomic chair, even the small collectible figurines, everything I had ever begged for was sitting here. She had given all of it to him. Chloe's phone rang, and she quickly hurried out of the apartment to take the call. A moment later, Zach walked out of the bedroom, holding a plate of my favorite food. I silently took the plate and started eating, mouthful by mouthful. Tears silently streamed down my face. Honestly, I had never hated him. We had been brothers for over 10 years. We had eaten cheap street food together and shared expensive dinners. I never expected us to end up like this over the same woman. Zach, do you still hate me? Before I could finish, a sharp, agonizing pain flared in my abdomen, forcing the words back down my throat. I doubled over, cold sweat instantly drenching my back as my knees crashed onto the floor in front of him. "Zach, call an ambulance," I gasped. But instead of helping, Zach lunged forward, his hands gripping my neck as his boot slammed hard into my lower abdomen. "I'm sorry, Ethan," he hissed, his face contorting with malice. "But I have no choice. If you can still have kids, Chloe will never let you go. She'll stop taking her birth control pills and try to have another baby with you. She's pregnant with my child right now. I won't let anyone threaten my baby's future." I shook violently, the pain in my gut turning into a white-hot scream. But Chloe and I had never, unless Zach was telling the truth. The excruciating pain in my lower abdomen intensified. That night wasn't a dream. Chloe had slept with me, but she had treated me like Zach. And then she took the morning after pill. I had thought it was just a fever dream, but it was real. She had fallen for Zach a long time ago. That was why our child would never be born. My mind flashed back to Chloe's first pregnancy, how carefully I had cared for her. But when one of my business rivals sought revenge, Chloe had miscarried at 7 months upon hearing the news. The hospital floor had been covered in blood that day. I had held her tight, her hot tears soaking my neck as she whispered, "It's okay, Ethan. We'll have another baby. As long as you're safe, nothing else matters." I slammed my fist into the floor, the physical pain bringing back a sliver of my sanity. I wanted to fight back, to save what was left of my pride, but it was useless. Zach's hands clamped over my mouth, suffocating my screams. "I've been sleeping with Chloe this whole time. Since I'm the real heir, she wanted to make it up to me. She wanted to give me the life she promised you. Every time I talked to you about my secret girlfriend, I was laughing inside, wondering how you'd react when you found out it was Chloe. You stole my life, so you deserve to suffer." His face twisted with sick satisfaction. "Don't blame me, Ethan. I have to destroy you before she starts feeling pity for you again. You enjoyed my life for over 20 years. You don't get a happy ending." My consciousness began to fade. In my haze, I remembered the first time I pressed my ear against Chloe's belly to listen for a heartbeat. She had told me our life would be perfect, that we had a bright future, and that she would always be on my side. Then the scene shattered. Chloe's cold face appeared, telling me how disappointed she was, asking how I could live so peacefully after stealing someone else's life. I shook my head violently. "Chloe, how could you believe him?" But she didn't move. She only drifted further and further away into a sea of red. When I opened my eyes again, I was lying in a cramped, pitch-black space. It was completely sealed. Through a tiny ventilation slit, my eyes locked onto the words on the wall outside. "Cremation Chamber 4. My heart stopped. I was still alive. I kicked the metal walls of the container frantically, screaming at the top of my lungs. I didn't want to die. My mind was terrifyingly sharp. If no one heard me, I was going to be burned alive. Suddenly, the heavy metal lid was yanked open. Fresh air rushed into my lungs. I gasped, grabbing the jacket of the person standing over me. "Help me." The two workers stared at me in absolute horror. "He's alive. Oh my God, this guy is still alive." They used my phone to call Chloe, and I was taken to the waiting room to recover. When Chloe arrived, Zach was hovering right behind her, his face dark. But the moment Zach saw me, he immediately put on a confused, innocent act. "Chloe, I really didn't mean to. Our son's dog died, and I wanted to cremate it. I didn't know Ethan would hide in there, because he was throwing a tantrum." Chloe glanced at me, the panic in her eyes instantly replaced by cold irritation. "Ethan, if you're done throwing your tantrum, come home with me." Her very first words were an accusation. Zach was just stressed. "He's been having a hard time lately. Don't hold a grudge over a misunderstanding." I had been locked in a coffin, nearly burned alive. And she dismissed all of it as me, throwing a tantrum. Before I could speak, Victoria rushed into the room. She bypassed me completely, throwing her arms around Zach. "Oh my God, Zach. Were you terrified?" I turned my head away. 20 years of being her son, 20 years of calling her mother. Even without blood, I thought there was some affection. But she didn't care about my burns or my trauma. She only cared about the monster who tried to kill me. Chloe was busy whispering comforts to Zach. The three of them looked like a perfect, happy family. "Ethan, since you're fine, let's drop this. Zach can't handle any more stress." I clutched my phone, my knuckles turning white. "Drop this? I almost died, and you want me to just drop it because I'm fine?" "Chloe, look at the security footage. See for yourself if he did it on purpose." I thrust my phone in front of her, my finger tapping on the video. Smack. "Enough." Chloe slapped the phone out of my hand. Her high heel came down hard, crushing the screen of my phone into pieces. Her eyes were icy. "I don't need to watch it. No matter what the camera shows, Zach didn't mean it." "Ethan, you didn't used to be this petty. When are you going to stop this?" I looked up at her, my heart completely turning to stone. Petty? If Zach was hurt, Chloe would tear the world apart to get revenge for him. But when it was me, she didn't even want to see the proof. Zach took a deep breath and suddenly dropped to his knees in front of me. Ethan, please, I beg you. Don't make things hard for me. Aren't we brothers? I just wanted a family. I just wanted someone to love me. I've been alone for so long. Victoria's eyes welled with tears as she comforted him, while Chloe pulled Zach back to his feet. It was laughable. Victoria and the woman I loved were both shielding him. What else did Zach want from me? My life was so miserable before this. Watching you live in luxury made me hate you. I couldn't help it. It was my fault, Zach sobbed. If my existence makes you this unhappy, I'll leave. I'll go back to the gutter and never bother you again. The last bit of hesitation in Chloe's eyes vanished. Her voice carried no warmth. Take Ethan and make him experience everything Zach had to go through. Zach looked up, our eyes meeting. Is this what you wanted? Did you almost kill yourself just to put on this show? My silence was deafening. Zach stiffened, quickly looking away. Our 10 years of brotherhood died right then and there. On that very day, I decided to let go of the two women I had loved most. For the next 3 days, I was subjected to Chloe's version of penance. I was dragged to a shoe factory, forced to squat in front of mountains of foul-smelling leather, polishing shoe after shoe until I felt like vomiting, but I wasn't allowed to stop. On the second day, her bodyguards took me to a convenience store in the slums. I was forced to stock shelves and work the register for over 16 hours straight. My legs swelled so badly that every step felt like dragging lead blocks. The moment I sat down to rest for a minute, Chloe's cold calls and Victoria's screaming texts would flood my screen. By the third day, my legs were so swollen I couldn't even stand. The injury in my lower abdomen had flared up, throbbing with a sickening heat. Only then did Chloe order them to stop. She had me thrown into the slums, into the dilapidated apartment where Zach used to live. I thought it would be a decent place. Instead, it was a damp, moldy, rat-infested basement. Zach really hated me, but when he was struggling, I was the one who skipped meals to save money from my strict allowance to help him pay rent. I was the one who used my first business profit to pay off his student loans and fund his first startup. The room was tiny, the walls peeling, the air thick with mildew. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. Back then, during summer break, I was worried Zach wouldn't have money, so I hired him as Chloe's assistant, paying him $3,000 a day. I made up business trips just so Chloe and I could take him to travel all over Europe with us. And this was how he repaid me. I wiped the sweat and tears from my face. My Snapchat buzzed with a friend request. Asterisk, hi Ethan. I'm Beatrice. I'm your biological mother. Asterisk. A lump formed in my throat. I typed a long message. Asterisk, why did you take so long? How did they mix us up? Why? Asterisk. But before I could hit send, a deafening roar shook the building. I looked out the window. A massive demolition excavator was tearing down the building next door, and it was heading straight for my unit. The walls began to crack, and dust rained down. Without thinking, I quickly sent my location to Beatrice. Asterisk, come get me. Asterisk. As the excavator's metal claw reached the window, my phone rang. It was Chloe. I tried to scramble out of the window, accidentally hitting accept on her call. Ethan, everything is settled. I talked to Victoria. You can stay in the family. Zach and his kid won't threaten your position. Just be good, and I'll come pick you up. Ethan? Hello? I didn't hesitate. I jumped out of the second-story window. My phone slipped from my grip, the screen still showing the active call, as it smashed onto the concrete. The air rushed past Ethan's ears, a cold, violent whistle that tore the breath from his lungs. For a fraction of a second, suspended between the crumbling second-story window of the tenement and the cracked asphalt below, he felt an odd, terrifying sense of peace. The suffocating weight of the Reynolds name, the ghost of a 5-year marriage built on sand, and the venomous betrayal of his closest friend, all of it seemed to elevate above him, left behind in the moldering apartment. Then came the impact. Ethan landed hard on a pile of discarded wooden pallets and construction debris. The wood splintered beneath his weight, absorbing the worst of the momentum. But a sharp, blinding agony flared through his right leg and up his spine. He rolled onto the dirt, coughing violently as a thick cloud of plaster dust and pulverized concrete billowed from the adjacent building. Behind him, the excavator's metal claw tore through the roof of the unit he had just inhabited, sending a shower of bricks raining down onto the very floorboards he had stood upon seconds prior. His phone lay 10 feet away, its screen shattered into a spiderweb of dead pixels, though a faint, tinny hum still vibrated from the speaker. Chloe's voice, distorted and distant, was still trying to pierce through the static. Ethan? Ethan, what is that noise? Stop playing games and answer me. With a trembling, dirt-caked hand, Ethan reached out, not to pick it up, but to push it further away. His fingers brushed the cold casing, shoving it into a puddle of muddy water. The screen flickered once, turned green and went completely dark. The connection was severed. For the first time in 5 years, he was entirely unreachable. The world began to spin. The pain in his lower abdomen, where Zach's boot had struck him days before, throbbed with a sickening, feverish heat. He lay in the shadow of the collapsing building, his vision tunneling into a narrow pinprick of light. Through the haze, the low, powerful rumble of an approaching vehicle cut through the noise of the demolition site. It wasn't the high-pitched whine of the luxury sports cars Chloe favored, nor the ostentatious roar of Victoria's custom town cars. It was a deep, muted purr. A heavy, midnight black SUV with reinforced plating and blacked-out windows pulled to a halt at the edge of the alleyway, ignoring the warning signs and the frantic waving of the construction foreman. The door flew open. A woman rushed out. She didn't care about the dust coating her expensive cashmere coat or the mud ruins of her designer heels. She had silver-streaked hair pulled back in a hurried bun, and her eyes, sharp, intelligent, and rimmed with red, scanned the rubble with desperate intensity. "Ethan," her voice cracked, carrying a raw, primal panic. "Ethan, oh my God, where are you?" Behind her, two tall men in dark suits stepped out, their eyes alert, scanning the perimeter with military precision. One of them spotted the crumpled figure lying near the shattered pallets. "Ma'am, over there." Beatrice lunged forward, dropping to her knees in the dirt beside him. Her hands hovered over his bruised, blood-stained face, trembling violently before gently cupping his cheek. My poor boy, what have they done to you?" Ethan looked up through swollen eyelids. The resemblance was undeniable. He had spent 20 years trying to force himself to look like Victoria Reynolds, trying to mirror her sharp, aristocratic nose and her cold, calculating gaze. But looking at Beatrice, he saw his own eyes, the soft curve of his brow, the quiet strength in the set of her jaw. "Mother?" The word felt heavy, foreign, and yet incredibly right on his tongue. "I'm here. I'm so sorry I took so long," Beatrice sobbed, pressing her forehead against his dusty shoulder. "We've been looking for you for 24 years. Ethan, we're going home. No one will ever hurt you again. Get the medical team," the lead security guard ordered into a lapel mic. "We have the young master. He is severely injured. Clear the private wing at the clinic immediately." As they lifted him gently onto a stretcher, Ethan's consciousness began to slip away. The last thing he saw was the massive claw of the excavator completely crushing the remaining walls of the apartment. The life of Ethan Reynolds was buried under that rubble. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Chloe Vance stood in the middle of her pristine, minimalist office, holding her phone to her ear. "The number you are trying to reach is currently unavailable or out of service," the automated operator drone repeated. Chloe slammed the phone down on her glass desk, her chest heaving. A strange, cold knot of anxiety was tightening in her chest, one she couldn't quite explain. "Why isn't he answering?" she muttered, pacing the floor. "He never ignores my calls. Never." The door to her office opened, and Zach walked in, holding a cup of premium coffee. He had a soft, sheepish smile on his face, but his eyes were constantly darting around, looking for any sign of trouble. "Chloe, darling, you look stressed. Is it still Ethan?" "He hung up on me, Zach," Chloe said, her voice tight. "And right before he did, there was this horrible, deafening noise. It sounded like something collapsing. I tried calling back, but his phone is completely dead." Zach took a slow sip of his coffee, hiding the smirk that threatened to form on his lips. He knew exactly what that noise was. He had personally authorized the accelerated demolition of the old tenement block, ensuring the crew didn't check the basement units too closely. "He's probably just throwing another tantrum. Chloe, you know how he is. He's trying to make you feel guilty, so you'll run back to him." "He's not like that," Chloe said, though her own words felt hollow. She remembered the cold, vacant look in Ethan's eyes when she had forced him to work in the shoe factory, how he hadn't even argued when she threw him into the slums. She had told herself it was penance for Zach's sake, a way to balance the cosmic scales for the 20 years Zach had suffered. But deep down, a small, quiet voice was beginning to ask, what if he really didn't do it? "He is like that," Zach insisted, stepping closer and wrapping his arms around her waist. Chloe stiffened slightly, an instinctual reaction she still couldn't shake, before forcing herself to relax into his embrace. "Remember what he did at the press conference? He tried to ruin my life. He's bitter, because I'm the rightful heir." "You're being too soft on him, Chloe." Before Chloe could reply, her assistant knocked on the door and stepped in, looking pale. "Ma'am, we just received a report from the demolition site in the Southern District, the tenement building where Ethan was staying." Chloe snapped her head around. "What about it?" "There was an accident during the clearing process. The building next door collapsed prematurely, crushing the unit Mr. Ethan was registered in. The rescue crews are currently clearing the debris." The coffee cup slipped from Zach's hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. "What? Did they find anyone?" They found a destroyed mobile phone registered to Ethan, the assistant whispered. But the local police say the area is too unstable. They haven't found a body yet, but given the scale of the collapse, they don't think anyone could have survived. Chloe felt the blood drain from her face. The room seemed to tilt. No, she whispered, her hands shaking. No, that's impossible. I just spoke to him. He was right there. She grabbed her coat and ran out of the office, ignoring Zach's frantic shouts. Behind her, when Ethan woke up, the smell of dust and mold was gone, replaced by the faint, soothing scent of white tea and clean linen. The ceiling above him was high and vaulted, painted with delicate, muted frescoes of skies and clouds. He lay in a massive, ergonomic medical bed, connected to state-of-the-art monitors that hummed in a low, rhythmic cadence. He tried to shift his legs, but a sharp ache reminded him of his injuries. Don't try to move just yet, sweetheart, a soft, trembling voice said from his bedside. Ethan turned his head. Beatrice was sitting there, her eyes puffy but filled with a warmth he had never once received from Victoria Reynolds. Beside her stood a tall, silver-haired man with an imposing posture, but his expression was incredibly tender as he looked down at Ethan. I am Andrew Sterling, the man said, his voice thick with emotion. And you, my boy, are Arthur Sterling, our only son. Sterling. Ethan's mind, still somewhat sluggish from the pain medication, struggled to process the name. The Sterling family was a name spoken only in hushed, reverent whispers in the highest business circles. Unlike the Reynolds family who flaunted their wealth with luxury cars and media campaigns, the Sterling Group was a quiet, global titan. They held monopoly-level stakes in shipping, defense, tech, and pharmaceutical manufacturing. They were old money, the kind of wealth that didn't need to shout to be heard. How? Ethan's throat was dry, his voice a raspy whisper. How did this happen? Andrew sat down on the edge of the bed, gently taking Ethan's hand. His grip was firm, yet incredibly careful. 24 years ago, your mother gave birth to you in a private clinic in the capital. It was a stormy night, and the hospital suffered a major power grid failure. In the chaos of the evacuation, a corrupt nurse, who had been bribed by Victoria Reynolds' late husband to swap their sickly, dying newborn with a healthy one, made a mistake. Beatrice wiped a tear from her cheek. The nurse didn't swap you with the Reynolds child. The Reynolds child had already passed away in the incubator hours before. She panicked, took our healthy boy, and delivered him to the Reynolds family to collect her bribe while placing an abandoned, sick child from the ward into our nursery. That child was Zach, Andrew explained, his eyes darkening with a cold, protective anger. We raised him, poured millions into his medical care, and treated him as our own. But as he grew older, he became increasingly volatile, dishonest, and cruel. We ran a DNA test when he was 18, only to find out he shared no genetic markers with us. We confronted him, Beatrice said, her voice trembling. Instead of helping us find our real son, Zach stole a large sum of money, fabricated a story about us abusing him, and ran away to the slums to play the victim. He knew that if we found you, he would lose any claim to our estate. He spent years tracking you down, befriending you under an alias, and slowly plotting to steal your life. Ethan closed his eyes, the puzzle pieces finally falling into place with a sickening click. Zach's abusive childhood was a complete lie. The suffering he claimed to have endured was entirely of his own making, a self-inflicted exile designed to paint himself as a martyr. He had targeted Ethan from the very beginning, using his knowledge of the switch to worm his way into Chloe's life and, eventually, Victoria's. And Victoria? Ethan asked, his voice hollow. She knew? Victoria Reynolds is a foolish, desperate woman, Andrew sneered. Her husband's estate was tied up in trusts that could only be accessed by a male heir. When Zach approached her with a falsified DNA test claiming he was her biological son, she didn't care about the truth. She only cared about securing the assets. She threw you away like garbage because she believed you were a nobody from the slums. Andrew squeezed Ethan's hand, his expression hardening into stone. But they made a fatal mistake. They thought you were powerless. They thought you were alone. They have no idea that the boy they tortured and humiliated is the sole heir to the Sterling Empire. Ethan looked down at his bandaged hands. He thought of the shoe factory, the cold concrete of the basement, the terrifying darkness of the cremation chamber, and Chloe's cold, indifferent slap that crushed his phone. A quiet, cold fire began to ignite deep within his chest. For 20 years, he had been the perfect, obedient son. He had tolerated Victoria's brutal, sleepless training. He had tolerated Chloe's icy rejection, locking away his own desires to protect her trauma. He had given Zach his money, his time, and his brotherhood. And in return, they had tried to burn him alive. Father, Ethan said, the words sounding stronger this time. Mother, I want to make them pay, not just with quick lawsuits.
I want to dismantle everything they think they own.
Andrew smiled, a cold, dangerous glint in his eyes that matched his son's. Everything we have is yours, Arthur. We have already initiated the protocols. The Reynolds Group is currently struggling under Zach's management.
They are desperate for a lifeline.
And they have no idea that we hold the leash. For the next 3 months, Ethan Reynolds ceased to exist. In his place, Arthur Sterling underwent a quiet, rigorous transformation. Under the care of the world's finest specialists, his fractured body healed. The scars on his forehead and hands faded under advanced dermatological treatments, leaving behind a flawless, elegant complexion. The exhaustion that had weighed down his shoulders for years was replaced by an aura of absolute, unshakable authority. He spent his days studying the Sterling Group's global portfolios, mastering the intricate webs of international finance that made the Reynolds Group look like a local convenience store. He was no longer the desperate youth trying to earn Victoria's approval. He was a king preparing to claim his throne. Meanwhile, the city's upper class was in a state of quiet chaos. Chloe Vance sat in her luxury sedan, staring out the window at the vacant lot, where the southern slum tenement once stood. It was now just a flat expanse of gravel and dirt. For 90 days, she had poured millions of dollars into search and rescue teams, private investigators, and forensic experts. They had combed through the rubble of the building, but they found nothing but Ethan's shattered phone and a few drops of dry blood that matched his DNA. "Ma'am," her driver said quietly, breaking the silence. "The board meeting for the joint venture with the Reynolds Group starts in 30 minutes. Mr. Zach has already called 3 times. Chloe didn't answer immediately. She looked at her ring finger. It was bare. The 10-carat diamond ring Zach had prepared sat in a drawer in her safe, untouched. Despite Zach's constant pressuring, she had delayed registering their marriage. Every time she looked at Zach lately, she felt a strange, creeping sense of revulsion. Without Ethan around to act as a buffer, Zach's true colors were rapidly
showing.
He was lazy, petulant, and incredibly insecure. He spent hours screaming at the staff, demanding respect he hadn't earned and throwing tantrums whenever the stock prices dipped, which they were doing rapidly. Furthermore, the trauma Chloe had claimed to suffer for years, the absolute aversion to intimacy, seemed to have transformed into a haunting realization. She had told herself she couldn't stand a man's touch because of her past. But during the few times Zach had tried to hold her hand or kiss her, she felt nothing but a cold, hollow emptiness. She realized, with a sudden, terrifying clarity, that she hadn't been ice cold because of her trauma. She had been cold because she was punishing Ethan, using her past as a shield to keep him at arm's length while secretly harboring a toxic, guilt-driven obsession with Zach. And now, Ethan was gone. Truly gone. "Drive," Chloe said, her voice dead. When she arrived at the Reynolds Group headquarters, the atmosphere was tense. The lobby, usually bustling with high-end clients, was quiet. Several receptionists were whispering among themselves. As she entered the executive boardroom, she heard Victoria's shrill voice echoing through the double doors. "How could you lose the North American shipping contract, Zach? That was 30% of our projected revenue for this quarter." "It wasn't my fault, Mother." Zach's voice was defensive, strained. "The client suddenly pulled out. They said they found a better partner, some European logistics firm. I did everything I could." Chloe walked in, her face an unreadable mask. "You didn't do enough, Zach. You didn't review the compliance clauses. I told you 3 weeks ago that the client was unhappy with our shipping delays." Zach snapped his head toward her, his face flushing with anger. "Oh, great. Now you're taking their side? Chloe, I'm your husband. You're supposed to support me." "We aren't married, Zach," Chloe said coldly, sitting down at the far end of the table. "The paperwork was never filed. And if you continue to run this company into the ground, my family's firm will pull our investments as well." Victoria's face paled. She looked significantly older than she had 3 months ago. The stress of managing Zach's constant blunders was taking its toll. "Chloe, please. Let's not make hasty decisions. We are family. Once the Sterling Group hosts their upcoming international gala next week, we will have a chance to secure a strategic partnership. I've managed to secure 3 invitations through our banking connections." "The Sterling Group?" Chloe frowned. "They rarely engage with domestic firms of our size. They're looking for a local partner to distribute their new biomedical line," Victoria said, her eyes gleaming with a desperate hope. "If we can secure even a minor contract with them, it will instantly stabilize our stock and restore our credibility." "Zach, you must be on your best behavior. This is our only chance." Zach puffed out his chest, trying to regain his confidence. "Don't worry, Mother. I'll handle it. I'll show them what the real heir of the Reynolds family can do." Chloe looked at him, feeling a sudden, deep wave of exhaustion. She closed her eyes, and for a brief moment, she saw Ethan's face, not the bruised, bloody face from the dressing room, but the quiet, brilliant designer, who used to stay up until 4 a.m. refining her company's marketing portfolios, never asking for a single cent of credit. "Where are you, Ethan?" she thought, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Are you really dead?" The Grand Plaza Hotel was bathed in a sea of golden light. Hundreds of luxury vehicles lined the private driveway, dropping off the elite of the global business, political, and cultural worlds. Security was absolute. Private guards in tactical gear patrolled the perimeter, verifying biometric invitations. Victoria, Zach, and Chloe walked through the grand lobby. Victoria wore her finest emerald necklace, trying to project an air of wealthy stability, while Zach strutted beside her in a bespoke tuxedo, looking around with a smug, entitled grin. Chloe followed behind them, wearing a simple, elegant black gown, her expression detached and distant. "Look at this place," Zach whispered, his eyes wide. "One day, we'll be hosting events just like this. Once I take over the entire Reynolds portfolio." "Keep your voice down, Zach," Victoria hissed, though she too was looking around with a mix of awe and envy. "We need to find the regional directors of the Sterling Group. I heard the chairman himself, Andrew Sterling, is attending tonight with his wife." As they entered the main ballroom, a massive space decorated with towering ice sculptures and crystal chandeliers, the hum of polite conversation filled the
Air.
Suddenly, the music died down. A spotlight illuminated the grand staircase at the far end of the room. The master of ceremonies stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it is our distinct honor to welcome the hosts of tonight's gala, the chairman of the Sterling Group, Mr. Andrew Sterling, and his wife, Mrs. Beatrice Sterling." The crowd erupted into polite applause as the elegant, silver-haired couple began to descend the stairs. "And tonight," the announcer's voice swelled with excitement, "we are incredibly proud to officially introduce, for the first time to the global stage, the sole heir to the Sterling Group estate. After a long, private absence, please welcome the Executive Vice President of the Sterling Group, Mr. Arthur Sterling." A second spotlight cut across the room, focusing on a figure stepping out from the top of the stairs. Chloe, who had been half distracted by her own thoughts, casually looked up. Her heart stopped. The man descending the stairs wore a flawless, midnight blue silk tuxedo that accentuated his tall, athletic frame. His hair was perfectly styled, revealing a sharp, aristocratic forehead. His skin was smooth and radiant, completely devoid of the exhaustion that had once clouded his features. His stride was slow, confident, and filled with a quiet, devastating grace. It was a face she had seen in her dreams every night for the past 3 months. "Ethan." The name escaped Chloe's lips in a strangled, breathless gasp. Beside her, Victoria's champagne glass slipped from her hand, shattering on the polished marble floor. Her eyes bulged out of her head, her face turning an ashen, ghostly white. "No, no, that's impossible. He's a fraud.
He's
Dead." Zach's smug grin vanished, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated terror.
he.
Stumbled backward, nearly knocking over a tray of hors d'oeuvres. "Ethan? How is he alive? And why is he up there?" The crowd applauded warmly as Arthur Sterling reached the bottom of the stairs, standing flanked by Andrew and Beatrice. Andrew placed a proud, supportive hand on Arthur's shoulder, while Beatrice beamed with a fierce, maternal love. "Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight," Arthur said. His voice was deep, resonant, and entirely steady. It carried none of the trembling hesitation of the man who had pleaded for his life in the cremation chamber. It was the voice of a man who held the world in his palm. "Tonight marks a new chapter for the Sterling Group. We are expanding our investments into the domestic market, and we look forward to establishing new, fruitful partnerships." Arthur's gaze swept across the crowd. It was sharp, cold, and entirely indifferent. For a brief second, his eyes locked onto Chloe. Chloe felt a sudden, desperate surge of hope. She took a step forward, her lips parting to call his name. But Arthur's gaze didn't linger. It passed over her as if she were nothing more than a pane of glass, completely invisible. The absolute, freezing indifference in his eyes cut deeper than any physical blow could have. He didn't even look at me," Chloe whispered, her chest tightening until she could barely breathe. "We have to get out of here." Zach panicked, grabbing Victoria's arm. "Mother, we have to leave right now. He's going to ruin us." "Don't be a fool, Zach," Victoria hissed, though her own hands were shaking uncontrollably. "He's the heir to the Sterling Group. If we leave now, it's an admission of guilt. We must go and greet him. There has to be a mistake. He was our son for 20 years. He owes us." "He doesn't owe you anything, Victoria," a cold, smooth voice said from behind. They spun around to see several tall, imposing security guards in dark suits, led by the Sterling Group's head of security. Mr. Arthur Sterling has requested your presence in the private salon, the guard said, his voice carrying a polite but unyielding threat. Please follow us. The private salon was a quiet, soundproofed room lined with rich mahogany panels and plush leather armchairs. Arthur Sterling sat behind a massive desk, slowly swirling a glass of amber whiskey. Andrew and Beatrice stood behind him, their expressions cold and protective. The door opened, and Victoria, Zach, and Chloe were ushered in by the guards. The moment the door clicked shut, Victoria rushed forward, her face twisted into a desperate, fake smile.
Ethan.
Oh, my darling boy. I knew you were alive.
I
Knew it. When they told me about the accident, my heart was broken. Silence, Arthur said. The word wasn't shouted. It was spoken in a low, quiet tone, but it carried such a weight of absolute authority that Victoria's voice was instantly cut off.
She
Froze in her tracks, her mouth half open. My name is Arthur Sterling, Arthur said, setting his glass down with a soft
click.
The name Ethan Reynolds died in the rubble of the tenement you threw him into. Chloe took a step forward, her eyes brimming with tears. Ethan, please.
I
Searched for you. I hired every investigator in the city. I was so worried. You searched for me, Chloe? Arthur looked at her, his expression entirely vacant.
Why?
To force me to do more penance. To send me to another factory to polish shoes? Or perhaps to find another cremation chamber for Zach to lock me.
And
Chloe's heart shattered. She shook her head violently.
no. I didn't know about.
The cremation chamber. I thought it was just a misunderstanding.
I
Swear. You didn't want to know, Arthur corrected her, his voice deadpan. I tried to show you the security footage. I tried to tell you the truth.
But you smashed my
Phone under your high heel. You told me that no matter what the camera showed, Zach didn't mean it. He turned his gaze to Zach, who was trembling so violently he had to lean against the wall for support. Zach, Arthur said quietly, we were brothers for 10 years. I paid your tuition. I paid your startup loans. I took you on vacations because I didn't want you to feel left out.
And
I was jealous, Zach stammered, his face pale as paper.
I thought you stole my life.
I thought if I didn't take everything back, I would have nothing. You had everything. Andrew Sterling stepped forward, his voice like thunder. We raised you. We gave you the best education, the best medical care, and a life of absolute luxury. But you were greedy. You were lazy. And when you found out you weren't our biological son, you chose to steal and run, rather than face the truth. What? Victoria gasped, her head spinning as she looked at Zach. He told me you abused him. He told me he was forced to live in the slums. He chose to live in the slums to play the victim, Beatrice said, her voice filled with disgust. He is a pathological liar, Victoria. And you were so desperate for a real heir to secure your late husband's trust funds that you believed every word he said, while discarding the boy who had served you faithfully for 20 years. Victoria fell to her knees, her eyes wide with terror. Arthur, please.
I
Raised you. I trained you. You are a Reynolds. You can't do this to us. I am not a Reynolds, Arthur said, leaning back in his chair. And as of tonight, the Reynolds Group is officially bankrupt. What? Victoria's breath hitched. Arthur picked up a thick folder from his desk and tossed it onto the floor in front of them. The paper scattered, revealing financial charts, loan agreements, and legal filings. Over the past 3 months, the Sterling Group has quietly acquired 80% of your company's outstanding debt, Arthur explained. We also purchased the minority shares from your board members, who were more than happy to sell after witnessing Zach's catastrophic management. Furthermore, Arthur continued, looking at Chloe, your family's firm, the Vance Group, is currently facing a massive compliance audit by the Federal Trade Commission. We uncovered several irregularities in your offshore accounts, irregularities that your assistant, whom we hired away last month, was happy to provide documentation for. Chloe's body went numb. You ruined my family? I didn't ruin them, Chloe. I simply stopped protecting them, Arthur said.
For
5 years, I worked behind the scenes to keep your firm compliant and profitable. I cleaned up your mistakes, handled your tax audits, and designed your marketing campaigns. I did all of it for free because I loved you. He paused, a faint, mocking smile touching his lips. But since I am frigid and incapable of understanding intimacy, I decided to stop. Without my intervention, your company's natural incompetence did the rest. As for you, Zach, Arthur's eyes locked onto his former friend with a cold, piercing intensity. The local police have already completed their investigation into the demolition site accident. They found the payment records from your Private account to the demolition crew's foreman, instructing him to ignore the basement clearance protocols. Zach's eyes widened. No, that was a mistake. They also found the security footage from the cremation chamber, Arthur added. The facility manager was quite cooperative once our legal team offered him a plea deal. Attempted murder carries a very lengthy sentence, Zach. I hope you enjoy your new home. It will be much smaller than the slums. The double doors of the salon opened, and 4 uniformed police officers stepped into the room, accompanied by several federal investigators. Zach Taylor, the lead officer said, stepping forward with handcuffs. You are under arrest for attempted murder, conspiracy to commit fraud, and corporate espionage. You have the right to remain silent.
No.
Chloe, help me. Mother. Zach screamed as the officers grabbed his arms, dragging him toward the door. He kicked and thrashed, his elegant tuxedo tearing, as he was forced to his knees. I'm the Reynolds heir. You can't do this to me. Victoria watched her biological son being dragged away in chains, her mind completely collapsing under the weight of the revelation. She looked at Arthur, her hands shaking as she reached out to him. Arthur, please. I'm your mother. Take her out, Arthur said, not even looking at her. The security guards gently but firmly escorted Victoria from the room, leaving only Chloe standing before the desk. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. Chloe stood there, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. The tears were flowing freely now, staining her beautiful black gown. She looked at Arthur, searching his face for even a single spark of the warmth, the devotion, the love he had once showered her with. But there was nothing. His face was a beautiful, flawless stone. Ethan, she whispered, her voice cracking. I made a mistake.
A
horrible, unforgivable mistake. I was so caught up in my own guilt, in the lies Zach told me. I forgot who you were. I forgot how much you loved me. I know, Arthur said. Can we talk? She pleaded, taking a step closer, her hand reaching out toward the desk. Just for 5 minutes. Let me explain. Let me make it up.
To you?
I'll give up my company, my family's wealth, everything. I just want us to go back to how we were. Arthur slowly stood up from his chair. He walked around the desk, stopping just a few feet away from her. Chloe's heart pounded in her chest. She braced herself, hoping he would touch her, hoping he would scold her, scream at her, show any emotion at all. Even anger would be better than this freezing void. But Arthur only looked down at her, his hands clasped casually behind his back. Chloe, he said softly, do you remember the night of our commitment ceremony? Yes, she nodded eagerly.
Yes.
My father tried to swap the groom, and I threw a tantrum. I chased you all the way to London to beg you back. Do you know why you did that? Arthur asked. Because I loved you, she whispered. No. Arthur shook his head, a quiet, pitying look in his eyes. You did it. Because of your pride. You couldn't accept that something you owned, something you had designated as yours, had walked away from you. You didn't love me.
Chloe.
You loved the idea of a loyal, obedient dog who would stay by your side, no matter how many times you kicked him. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. For 5 years, I respected your boundaries. I slept on the couch, locked away my own desires, and spent every waking hour trying to heal a trauma that didn't even exist. You weren't traumatized, Chloe. You were just sleeping with Zach behind my back.
No.
That night, it was a mistake. I was drugged. It doesn't matter anymore, Arthur interrupted her, his tone entirely conversational. Whether it was a mistake or not, it's in the past. And I have no interest in the past. Please, Ethan, she sobbed, dropping to her knees before him, grabbing the hem of his trousers. Don't leave me. I have nothing left. Without you, I'm nothing. Arthur gently, but firmly, pulled his trousers from her grip. He didn't look
angry.
He didn't look vindictive. He looked like a man passing a stranger on the street. You have yourself, Chloe. And you have the consequences of your choices, he
said.
He turned his back on her, walking toward the large glass window that overlooked the glittering city skyline. Behind him, Andrew and Beatrice stepped forward, placing their hands on their son's shoulders, a united front of absolute solidarity. Our legal team will handle the dissolution of your family's assets, Andrew said to Chloe, his voice cold. Please leave before we have security escort you
out.
Chloe looked at Arthur's back. He was standing tall, his silhouette framed by the golden lights of the metropolis. He was beautiful, powerful, and completely out of her reach. She realized, with a final, crushing certainty, that the man who had loved her, the man who would have torn the world apart to keep her safe, was truly dead. And she was the one who had killed him. She slowly stood up, wiped her tears, and walked out of the room, her footsteps echoing hollowly in the quiet corridor. 6 months later, the spring air in Geneva, Switzerland, was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of fresh pine and alpine snow. Arthur Sterling stood on the terrace of a modern, minimalist villa overlooking Lake Geneva. He held a cup of black coffee, watching the morning sun reflect off the calm, blue waters. A sleek tablet lay on the glass table beside him, displaying the latest international financial news. Reynolds Group officially dissolved, assets acquired by Sterling Enterprises. Zach Taylor sentenced to 25 years for attempted murder and financial fraud. Vance Group declares bankruptcy. Chloe Vance reportedly working as a junior clerk in a regional firm. Arthur glanced at the headlines before calmly closing the tablet. The names, Reynolds, Zach, and Chloe, no longer triggered even a flicker of resentment in his heart. They were just words on a screen, footnotes in a life he had long since outgrown. He had spent the last 6 months focusing on his true passion, design. Free from the corporate shackles Victoria had placed on him, he had launched a new, high-end sustainable architecture firm under the Sterling Group's umbrella. His designs had already won several prestigious international awards, praised for their elegance, strength, and resilience. The glass door of the villa slid open and Beatrice walked out, holding a warm
Pastry.
She had a soft, peaceful smile on her face. "Good morning, Arthur," she said, kissing his cheek. "Your father is on the phone with the Tokyo team. They are ready to begin construction on the new Eco Pavilion. Tell him I'll be down in 10 minutes. Arthur smiled, taking a sip of his
Coffee.
He looked out at the vast, open horizon. The sky was clear, the water was deep, and the future was entirely his own. He had survived the fire, the dust, and the betrayal. And from the ashes of Ethan Reynolds, Arthur Sterling had finally found his home.